I just wanted to extend that same conversation. Fiona, you look like you've got a mic there. I'm kind of curious to see your views. I would imagine megatrends form a really important part of the dialogue at Post. What are you seeing out in the future? Opportunities, threats?
Yeah, definitely. Clearly, we know artificial intelligence will become ubiquitous, right? The Internet of Things. You know, I've heard someone talk a while ago that the Internet will no longer be a thing in the sense of, at the moment we say we need to Google something or we need to go on the Internet. The Internet will be all around us. It will be everywhere and we will not notice it. So what I'm hearing about technology is that, you know, technology will only be here to serve humans. So hopefully, I imagine a world whereby our lives are far simpler. And that'll be things like, you know, identity. I imagine my children, when they are 18, not having to ever carry a wallet with physical identity. It will be so simple for them to go in and say, oh no, I'm this age, or you won't even need to because people will know. You know, there will be obviously autonomous vehicles or those things, but it is really hard to predict, say, next 10 years what the world will be like. There's that saying, you know, we always...
That's why I'm not answering the question.
Yeah, we always overestimate what we can achieve in a year, but we underestimate what we can achieve in 10.
Great quote.
So with exponential growth, I have no idea, but I do think that there will be certain things around, identity, around the way in which we live our lives will be completely different.
Dan, your thoughts?
Has anyone read Ray Kurzweil, Google's chief scientist? He's got a book called The Singularity is Near. I'm going to get a little meta here.
Does everyone know what the singularity is? Which would be, yeah.
Okay. In 2005, we were trying to develop facial recognition software for criminals, terrorists, etc. And at the time, babies could do it better than the best computers on Earth. And they said it will never be possible for a computer to recognize a human face the way a human can do it. I've gone through Australian customs half a dozen times in the last year, and I haven't talked to a person.
Yeah.
And they said it would never happen. In 2007, they said, okay, GFC, safe job is trucking. Go drive trucks, because computers will never do that. And there are fleets of trucks on the road in the U.S. without a driver. So I think the macro trend, well, there's two things. Moore's law is accelerating. So the rate, it's not just it doubles every 2 years. The actual rate is increasing as well as that time horizon. It's getting shorter. It's doubling like every year, year and a half. But the big macro trend, which is going to be very hard in the Western world, is the number of jobs that just will cease to be. And some companies are experimenting it. The alternative minimum income, where it's not welfare, it's just like, yep, we don't have a job for you as a society, but we don't want you to be derelict, so we're just going to give you some money so you can participate. Like, that sounds really hard today, but I think in like 3, 5, 7 years, we're going to see that a lot more, and maybe by 2030, like, the nature of work will be totally different. And the things that we say are immutable laws, computers will never do it, I suspect they will.
Very nice. I'm just going to ask one last question and then let everyone get back to having a few drinks. And I'm going to start across the panel. Juan, this, I think, has really been a defining piece in your career. What is... we used the term when we were having a drink before. Well, I made this line up, actually. But, like... everyone can borrow this if they want. Can elephants and mice play together? Which is to say... work with me, people. Which is to say, how do corporates and startups, come together? It's almost as if they kind of need each other, but there's not a lot of great success stories to point to. But as we were talking before, it seems like there's some standards emerging, the accelerator programs, the entrepreneurship programs that are going on. When we chatted yesterday, your time at Telenor, coming into the R&D department and realizing it was like a university churning out white papers, it's night and day to what you're doing today. How does a corporate support and but not support, because that's kind of non-beneficial, but support and benefit from a startup ecosystem?
I don't know what the right answer is. I have seen many attempts, from Muridi, accelerators. I saw some in the States that were quite good, where companies would invest in a large office and with funding for accelerators, and they will actually leave them alone. They will be like, you have 2 years, here's your funding, I don't want anything from you, just grow. I've also seen companies try to bring them in, and that often doesn't work that well because they get entangled in the corporate world. I was thinking more about how can you allow the companies to innovate internally. I think it's really difficult to replicate the incentives that a startup has naturally. So I think that's why people struggle, because you're trying to regenerate that thing, which is the hunger to succeed, the hunger to, make something new. And sometimes you just have to have that adversity against you. But internally, my story about Elon was, and what you said earlier, is about there's always people internally in companies that are willing to offer a lot for whatever they believe. And how can you empower them and identify them and let them do their thing internally. Most of the things are skunk works, right? Most of the best things that happen in companies. So how can you let these things happen and then not just not kill it? You just let it grow.
Very nice. Fiona?
Is this working? Yep. I think that there's a really good opportunity for startups to be basically seeking funding now more from corporates than just your traditional venture capitalists.
Absolutely, yeah.
The benefit of potentially partnering up or getting funding from a corporate VC type fund is that you get access to their networks, you get access to their channels to market, the capabilities of an established business. So it's about working out, if I were a startup, it's to be working out, well, which company would best fit my needs, what are my gaps, what are my opportunities here that I could seek out, and then find a corporate that's willing to invest and look after me in that way, not just about the funding. It's much more about the assets, the capabilities of a large corporate that you can access.
Yeah, very nice. Dan, some final comments?
This is a hard one. The foundational culture is critical. It's really hard to shift a culture of a company. Like, seen a lot of companies with incubators that don't make it, and companies that don't have incubators that are still growing and innovating over time. But the one thing that I think every company that does this well is, though it often requires a skunkworks type structure, it needs visibility and it needs executive support. I think about, like, we have a customer, New York Times, is using us, and their CEO came out and said, like, we are betting our future on doing this as a business. 100-year-old company, gray lady, old print, but they are, like, this is it, we're doing it. And even though it's a center of excellence, the hope is that the learnings get disseminated elsewhere. And we see that also with, like, IBM. Like, a VP gets on a call with his hundreds of directs and says, we're doing this, we're trying it, and we're gonna learn from it, and we're gonna grow. And that mentality, I think, is not a guaranteed for success, but at least a minimum criteria to learn as an organization.
Yeah.
Just one example. Something that we're doing is, one of the companies that we saw in Israel is making these water sensors for the home that tell you the temperature and the water flow. And they are in a very early stage. The guy was super excited showing me these prototypes. And we actually want to invest in them, and because, like you say, if we roll it out, we will be a customer of millions. So if we put that into the table, that allows this company to grow, and if we invest in them, obviously we get both of the upsides, right? So I mean, that's one example that could work that we're trying.
Yeah, and I think like almost everything, when we were chatting upstairs before, we said, the train's left the station, but we don't know necessarily what the destination is yet. It feels like all of society is living through a transient period right now. We had an amazing chat upstairs. We could sit up here talking for ages, but obviously we know that everybody else has been having some great chats. So we're going to finish it up there. If anyone's brave enough to ask Dan the last thing he was talking about when he was upstairs, then definitely go ask him.